Now, this is the only area where I'm going to profess to be a progressive, all right? In this particular area. God has revealed his standards of right and wrong progressively in history. In other words, the same revelation or same idea, the same way God has revealed has not always been the same. For example, when we go back to Adam and Eve, who the first humans, they had an intuitive love relationship with God. How did they know to give God his rightful place and love each other equally? Well, they just knew it by direct revelation. They had that relationship with God kind of with one stipulation: don't eat of the tree. Again, so honor me by not doing this. If you do, you'll die. So they intuitively understood, giving God his rightful place and giving each other their rightful place. And for a period of time, they lived in that relationship until they broke it and mankind fell. After the fall, you see a lot of other activity in Scripture. I think, for example, of Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel still understood, hey, I really shouldn't kill my brother. In fact, Cain felt guilty when he did it because, again, the law of God was still, it was inbuilt. It was inbuilt. It was close to creation. It was revelational. The human beings understood, give God his rightful place. Yeah, it's not right to treat others more than different I treat myself. And so Cain was judged for what he did. And you see that in history. As history then goes along, what we call ancient history, think of the time of Abraham, think of the time of Job. He's actually considered, maybe during Abraham's time, one of the older patriarchs. That whole time period in history shows the universality of people understanding their moral obligations. You see them building altars because they kind of know they need to do something to get right with God. They're offering sacrifices because they're aware of their own sins. And there's all kinds of discussion about conduct, right and wrong conduct. In fact, the whole book of Job is a running discussion about, shall not God do right? And there's right, and how about this, and how about that? And so you have all that during ancient history, but it was in the middle of a lot of idolatry. The further they got away from, the direct revelation in the garden. And then you have a very interesting thing coming about when God created the nation of Israel. And that's kind of the next step, which is about 1300 BC all the way till the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. Through Moses, the moral law is written down for the first time. It didn't change anything. It just made plain in a tenfold way what had always been true. Because the first 4 commandments are about what? They're about our supreme love to God. No gods before him, don't make any idols, don't take his name in vain, and honor the Sabbath because it's the day he rested. So the first 4 have to do with giving God his rightful place. The second 6 are all about our equal human relationships. Don't murder, don't lie, don't steal, don't kill, don't covet. All those kinds of things. So it's all about you're equal in relationships, so don't abuse the rights of the others. So it's God taking his law that's always been and simply writing it down in a brilliant, tenfold way. And of course, during that time period, God also gave to Moses and the nation sacrificial laws and also ceremonial laws. The sacrificial and ceremonial laws, they actually taught the Hebrew people a lot about God's character. They were for some good health practices. They had to do with forming their first civil government. But ceremonial and civil are kind of a little bit different ballgame. It had to do with them as a nation. The moral law had always been true, would always be true, and was given in the form of the 10 Commandments. In the coming of Jesus, in about 4 to 6 BC, depending on when they peg it, till he died in near 30 AD, 29 AD, Jesus confirmed the beauty and the truth of God's law. In fact, we're going to read that just in a moment. What's interesting about him is that Jesus took the 10 commands of Moses and he condensed them into 2. And I'll read that for you. In Matthew 22, 37 to 40. Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, all your mind. So there's the aspect of, give God his supreme place. Okay? This is the first and greatest commandment, Jesus said. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. He said, all the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commands. So again, back in the garden, give God his rightful place and treat your fellow man equally. Then it was finally put into a tenfold, here's a tenfold expression of the way you're meant to live. And now Jesus is saying, well, really, those 10 things boil down to 2 things. Love God supremely, love your fellow man equally. And then it goes one step further in the age of the church. AD 29 or so until now, where basically Paul, kind of being very pithy, basically reduces all of our moral obligations down to one word. That's the word love. The law of love. 3 references. This is Romans 13, 8 to 10. Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet. Whatever other commandment there may be can be summed up in this one command, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, Jesus had said that, but Paul says, love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. He brings it down to one word, love. Kind of implying, okay, love God according to how you should and love other people according to how you should. But it comes down to one word, love. Galatians 5:14, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Again, with a distinction between God and people. And then another one, 1 Timothy 1:5, Paul said, the goal of our instruction is love. So to sum this up, our obligations in terms of the way we ought to live are basically simple, and they've never changed. Have never changed. In fact, they never will change. What's always been true will always be true. The standard has not changed. Love God supremely, give him his rightful place, and love him in accord with what he is worth being loved. Love one another as much as you love yourselves. Treat each other equally. That's the law. That's what it's always been and always will be. God lives this way, and so do all the righteous angels. They live by that principle. What about human beings? We ought to do the same. That leaves us with only 2 more questions. So I guess there's 2 more questions. We'll answer 2. Why was the law given then? Why was it given? And finally, maybe the hardest question of all, are human beings able to keep God's law?